Welcome, everyone, to the Eugene City Council meeting, and welcome everyone that's here and at home. The first thing we're going to do today is, because at our work session we were able to do our consent calendar except for one item, which was the ratification of Intergovernmental Relations Committee minutes, and we had one bill from that we wanted to discuss. It's on the table, so we're going to bring it back and put it on the table here. And here is Brenda Wilson to talk to us about this. I believe it's House Bill 4017, and Councilor Taylor has moved and seconded in opposition to that.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
For the record, Brenda Wilson, Intergovernmental Relations Manager. House Bill 4017 was introduced on behalf of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It would require an ignition lock device for 5 years after the last revocation or suspension. It applies only to people who have had 4 DUIs in the past 10 years prior to the revocation or the, excuse me. And in addition to those DUIs, there had to be an additional conviction, a conviction of any degree of murder, manslaughter in the first or second degree, criminally negligent homicide, assault in the first degree, or aggravated vehicular homicide. So it only applies to just the most egregious of offenses. And again, it would apply for 5 years. This bill, as you know, tomorrow is the deadline for bills to pass out of the Chamber of Origin. And things are moving very fast up in Salem. This bill passed out of the Judiciary Committee this morning and now goes to the floor for full consideration.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Taylor, did you want to say anything about your motion?
Yes. This would take place after the person has served time, if that was required, after they've completed whatever classes are required. Is that correct?
Mayor Piercy, Councilor Taylor, yes, it would occur after the suspension or revocation was over.
It's after they got the license back. So it's after the person has been punished. And with this would be 5 more years of punishment.
Mayor Piercy, Councilor Taylor, it would be 5 years of having an ignition lock device on their car.
Which is punishment, and I think this person would be remorseful enough already. And it would be embarrassment and punishment for 5 additional years. So I just think it's excessive.
Okay, I have, from the previous work session, I have Councilor Pryor in the queue, Councilor Polling, and Councilor Farr. Councilor Pryor.
Thank you. Having worked with alcoholics for a number of years in past lives, I think this particular motion or piece of legislation, I think, is actually very valuable, because it doesn't take the person who's been convicted once or somebody who accidentally drank too much and drove. This is somebody who is a habitual drinker and driver, someone who has killed somebody. They drank, they drove, and they committed vehicular homicide, manslaughter, or assault with a vehicle. Oftentimes the folks that I've worked with who are like that, you can't keep them out of their car. They'll get back in their car every chance they get. You can take their license, you can do whatever you want. You can put them in jail, and as soon as they get out of jail, they'll get back in their car and they'll get drunk. I think the desire to have an interlock device is an incredibly smart idea, and I think the city should support the notion of this. I recognize I don't have a lot of patience with drunk drivers, particularly habitual drunk drivers. And so I don't think the notion that they have suffered enough even comes close to what these people would try to do once they were released from jail. There needs to be an interlock device on these people, but rather than have it apply to everyone, it's only for those people that have already demonstrated that they can't control their drinking to the point where they have killed somebody. I think an interlock device in this case is a very good idea, so I will not support the motion.
Councilor Polling.
Well, Councilor Pryor brought up all the points that I was going to bring up. You know, the years that I was working on the traffic enforcement team doing DUI investigations and crime scene, traffic collision reconstruction work. A lot of the times it was people, like Councilor Pryor pointed out, people that are repeat offenders. And these are the people that need to be kept off the roads. And I have no problem whatsoever supporting the bill as worded, and I can't support Councilor Taylor's motion.
Counselor Farr?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question regarding process. I see this is House Bill 4017. Greg Smith, Dave Hunt, Mark Hass, Kim Thatcher, kind of bipartisan, isn't it?
Mayor Piercy, Councilor Farr, yes, it is, and it passed out unanimously for the House Judiciary Committee this morning, which is also, as you know, a bipartisan committee.
It is indeed. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Counselor Brown?
Well, this is the first I've heard of the bill, and I initially had some reservations, but I kind of don't see it as a continuation of the punishment. The person's already been punished and served a sentence and undergone treatment, I assume. And so this is more like monitoring or supervision of that person. It's post-punishment supervision rather than an actual punishment itself. It's just like, yes, you can drive this vehicle, but you have to be sober to do so. You cannot have alcohol in your blood. And so I think I'll go ahead and support the priority 3 support recommendation. The only problem I see with it is, of course, the person doesn't have to drive that car. They can drive another car, and they won't be monitored. But at least if they're going to drive their car, they will be monitored. So I suppose that's an improvement. Thanks.
So just to clarify, when it comes to us, because we had one vote on both sides, it comes with no recommendation or a recommendation or to support staff's recommendation?
Mayor Piercy, in this particular case, staff recommended a priority 3 support. Councilor Taylor made a motion to oppose the bill. There was no second.
That's right, we brought it back up again. So if her motion goes down, then we don't need to vote again, we accept the, right?
Correct.
That's what I wanted to clarify. Okay, would you please vote? 5 in opposition and 1 in favor, so it goes down, and so we just move on as
Thank you, Mayor.
previously recommended.
My button didn't work, but I was going to vote no.
Okay, so now we're going to...
Should be 6.
6.
Should be 6.
Should be
I
six.
voted no. My light didn't work.
This little light of his.
It didn't shine.
Right.
Okay, 6 and 1.
Right.
All right. We're going to go now to the public forum. I'm going to open up the public forum. The public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. A yellow light will come on when you have 15 seconds to complete your comments. The red light indicates the end of your 3 minutes. And we have 30 people signed up to speak tonight. So, let the games begin. Gene Stacy's up first, followed by Larry Leveroni.
Gene Stacy, Eugene 944 West 12th Alley. Good evening, Mayor and Council people. I was given this book today. It's called This Changes Everything. It's about the Occupy Wall Street movement. And I thought it was a little misnomer because, in fact, the truth is everything has already changed before Wall Street ever started. And that's why it started. Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, is a reaction. The changes that I think all of us, y'all included, are somewhat overwhelmed by. How do we get a handle on it? And I think Occupy's job is to bring these things to everybody's attention in hopefully the most quiet way we can do it. And if we don't succeed, then we have to get a little noisier. And this is a way I think of supporting you in doing your work, and at the state level and at the national level, is to create enough awareness that people will allow you to make good decisions. We think or I personally think, that we need to take issues one at a time and start undoing the harm that has been done in this society that we're living in, that is doing things in an unimaginably stupid way with regard to our health care, with regard to our education, with regard to pollution. You can just go right on down the list. One of the things where I think Eugene has been making a mistake, of which I have only become aware recently, is the downtown public safety zone, also known as the exclusion zone, or in some cases, the exclusivity zone. I've asked for appointments to speak with y'all individually about the particulars because it is an amazingly confusing policy. I don't think y'all are aware of where it is being taken, because I don't think you would stand for it. I know none of us are able to stand for it anymore. So we will be asking you not to extend the exclusion zone. It is terribly discriminatory. It is not what Eugene claims to be. So we will be talking to you about it. We will ask you not to extend it under any circumstances for any length of time. It's doing too much harm. We have better ways to solve the problems of downtown than punishing people for the way they look and for very minor offenses that they commit. We need somehow to unite behind all of us to provide programs, services, and respect for all of us, and that is, I believe, the only way that we are going to get together for a peaceful and productive future together. So I hope you'll listen to what we have to say. Thank you.
Larry Leveroni is next, followed by Patricia Deal.
I'm a little nervous. This is my first time. My name is Larry Leveroni. I live downtown. I've lived there for 14 years now at 10th and High Street. I had an Irish mother who told me that if I couldn't say what I needed to say in 7 words or less, I don't know what I'm talking about. With all due respect to Gene. I do not support the exclusion zone.
Patricia Deal is next, followed by Tony Hernandez.
My name is Patricia Deal, and I live in Eugene, and I'm not sure which ward it is. I'm speaking on the resolution for the corporate entities. And I support this resolution, and I would also like to see it referred to the voters. Now, when I was a teenager, there were a group of kids who would crash parties, and sometimes they'd be destructive. They were usually some of the spoiled rich kids. Their fathers would pay the damages, and consequences, not so much. Their tactics generally for getting their way were to bribe and or bully. And it looks to me like some of the same ilk are now sitting on Wall Street, and they're using the same tactics to get their way. Only now they often hide behind the mask of corporations. It is not too difficult to see the tactics of bribing and bullying in use today, and it is especially clear in the forms of big money lobbying and campaign spending, both of which target our elected representatives. Perhaps it's no wonder that the very legislators who are responsible for curbing the excesses of the super wealthy are not willing to do so. To my knowledge, the only way to deal with the bully is to stand up to him and say no, loud and clear, and ideally with witnesses. So it seems to me that if the legislators are reluctant to act and the courts are stacked with their cronies, it is high time that we, the people on Main Street, the taxpayers, the voters, make our statements and make them loud and clear and many. Make it clear that we stand behind those legislators who will stand up to the bullies who wish to preempt the democratic process of free speech with the bullying shout of money. We may have a right to hear what the corporation has to say, but we also have the right to know exactly who is talking. And we do not have a duty to allow a megaphone to be blasting in our ear. We all know that money is not speech, but money can buy a lot of hot air, not to mention the airtime to blow it off. I support this resolution, and I'd like to see it put before the voters. Thank you.
Tony Hernandez is next, followed by John Davidson.
Hi, my name is Tony Hernandez, 4090 Pearl Street, City, Eugene resident for almost 30 years. During those 30 years, I've been playing tennis on the Eugene public courts, and the condition of those courts back then was okay to moderately good. But in the last 20 years, they have gone into various states of disrepair with significant cracking, torn nets, and very little tennis paint left on the surface. There's been one recent exception to the lack of court improvements in Eugene, that being the city-owned Echo Hollow Willamette High School tennis courts. These courts were recently resurfaced with a layer of gravel over the old tennis court, and then asphalt on top of that, and professionally painted by an Atlas tennis company. This project completed in 2010, and to the estimated cost to the city of Eugene of $137,000. I'm here tonight to ask that Eugene-owned public courts at the three high school competition sites, Churchill, Sheldon, and South Eugene, be cleaned and repainted this summer. At this time, these court surfaces are somewhat unsafe for the high school tennis teams that practice and compete there. I've coached high school tennis for 12 years, first at Willamette High School and recently at South Eugene. And tonight I'm also speaking for many of the Eugene principals, athletic directors, coaches, players and their families, and general recreation players. The responsibility of planning to maintain courts and disseminate information should be part of the business of the staff members in the public works, parks, and recreation departments. Someone needs to organize and coordinate a better communication model between city staff members and the high school coaches, administrators, and the families that use the courts. Many of these coaches and tennis families are expert in what constitutes a good tennis facility and should be able to share and contribute their positive ideas and talents, creating a large, unified tennis community that can easily communicate with city staffers. There's been, recently I was told by a Eugene staff member that there were no more funds available to repaint any tennis courts. But last week, a Sheldon parent emailed me and said they had been in communication with a city staff member, a different one, who mentioned that there had been money earmarked to clean and repaint the Sheldon courts. I heard that the city has the funding to build a pickleball court. And
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. John Davidson is next, followed by Mark Callahan.
Good evening. My name is John Davidson. I've lived in and around Eugene since 1989. I have a house in Betty Taylor's ward. I currently reside at 18th and Alder Street. I'm a former attorney. I currently teach constitutional law and related subjects for the University of Oregon Political Science Department. The statement I'm giving does not necessarily reflect the views of the Political Science Department or the university. I'd like to commend this council for deciding to address the dual intersecting problems highlighted by the recent Citizens United versus FEC decision. Those problems being a corrupted campaign finance system and unrestrained corporate privilege and power. My understanding is that the proposal that you're working on right now reflects pretty closely the language of the resolution from the City of Portland. And I commend that, and I think if we can't do anything else, then adopting such a resolution would be a positive step. At the same time, I feel like there are things missing from that resolution that need to be brought to the attention of the senators and representatives to whom we'd be addressing this resolution. In particular, the amendments that are proposed by DeFazio, Representative DeFazio, and Senator Merkley authorize Congress, and they authorize the states to impose limits on certain kinds of campaign finance, but they don't direct or demand anything like that. They don't say there shall be no more corporate spending in political campaigns. And it's a little bit as if the 13th and 14th Amendments said, Congress, if it feels like it, can prohibit slavery. Congress, if it feels like it, can provide for equal protection. At some point, there needs to be a mandate and say corporate power has gone too far. I've been studying that issue for over a decade now, and the closer I look at it, the more I'm convinced that the gradual adding to corporate power that we've allowed has run afoul of other constitutional provisions. Article 1, Sections 9 and 10 of the Federal Constitution and Article 1, Section 29 of the Oregon Constitution say there shall be no titles of nobility. People often rhetorically refer to corporate aristocracy and corporate nobility, but when you look at it seriously and literally, it's a problem. Titles of nobility don't refer to labels. They don't refer to duke and baron. We have land titles. We have car titles. Titles are sets of privilege and power. And over time, over the last 2 centuries, we've taken what was a good idea, limited liability, for certain public purposes, and we've expanded it to include land ownership, perpetual land ownership, and other critical resources that were never allowed. Thank you.
Mark Callahan is next, followed by Leila Trope.
Good evening, members of the City Council. My name is Mark Callahan. I live in Northeast Eugene in Councilor Polling's ward. I'm here tonight to speak about sustainability and fiscal responsibility. Sustainability has been a pop culture buzzword that has been associated with various green or environmental initiatives in our community. Sustainability has also been used to justify the Envision Eugene process and the currently proposed West Eugene MX bus system. However, sustainability and its definition of something that can be sustained into the future does not apply when describing LTD's proposed West Eugene MX bus system, nor does it apply when describing the UN's Agenda 21 socialistic and tyrannical ICLEI program. The West Eugene MX bus system will cost the taxpayers upwards of $100 million. Contrary to the belief of some members of this council, this is not free money. LTD's pensions are not fully funded, thus not sustainable into the future. LTD chooses to devote resources and taxpayer money, more specifically other people's money, to a wasteful project serving at most 6% of our community metropolitan population over the next 20 to 30 years. As a result of the proposed West Eugene MX project, LTD is cutting routes and has no plan on how to pay for increased operational expenses, of which the $100 million of taxpayer money cannot be used to pay for. As members of this council, it is your responsibility to take action to be fiscally responsible stewards of taxpayer money. Spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on this city's membership in the International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives, or ICLEI, is not financially responsible nor sustainable. We need to get our fiscal houses in order and start to think more financially sustainable as opposed to just thinking we are being sustainable by supporting green or environmental initiatives and feel-good projects such as wasting time and resources talking about corporate personhood resolutions locally that will not have any impact. Thank you.
Leila Trope is next, followed by Charles Hibbard.
I live in Lane County, not in Eugene proper, but I think you all know I've been highly involved in these issues. I want to...
Would you give your name, please?
Oh, Leila Trope. I'm sorry. I want to thank Mark for his comments. I thought they were excellent. I can't change a thing. Couple things have come up. I kind of wrote some notes. I wasn't sure I even had anything to say, but of all the people behind me, I have to ask myself, when you villainize corporations, Anybody you're married to work for a corporation? You work for a corporation? Are they all that evil? Really? You want to end them? Fine. The other thing I wanted to say, which is a bumper sticker, and I say this to all the people around me that are employed by the city or the county. If it's in the phone book, the county or the city shouldn't be doing it. We are spending taxpayer money that could and should be done by private enterprises. We don't need to be babysat by county and city and municipal things so that we can all have these wonderful feel-good meetings so that we can all talk about what our complaints are. The bottom line is we need to get down to the bottom line of business. LTD, for instance, is going to be hurting businesses. These business owners don't necessarily have the wherewithal to be here. They're afraid to take on the city. They're afraid to take on the mayor. They're afraid to take on the county. They don't understand they can. Instead, they're going to pay ridiculously high increases in transit taxes, as we've seen happen in Portland with the Metropolitan Service District. It just becomes a monster. We need to get this to a vote of the people. We need to get this to a point where LTD puts out in bottom line, black and white, this is the financial impact statement, this is how much it's going to cost the businesses, this is how much it's going to cost the city, this is how much it's going to cost in extra taxes for everybody, whether they work at the businesses affected and impacted, whether they own the businesses that are afraid that they can't do any changes. This is ridiculous. These people, and you know, Mayor Piercy, in all due respect, you're rubber stamping anything and everything by your own words, and Mr. Ruiz, which I've written to you, rubber stamping anything that sounds green. It's a sustainability issue. It's a green issue. It's popular. Occupy's all about green. What the hell is it? Excuse me. What is it? Green is something that other people pay for. There are 30, 50 books out on the market right now talking about green, as it's happened in Europe, has become nothing more than their downfall and their demise. It's a stepping stone to socialism and communism. Green is a way for people to take other people's money and redistribute wealth. It's bad enough other places. We don't need it here.
Charles Hibbert is next, followed by Stan Taylor.
I'm Charles Hibbert, and my business is down on West 11th, and I actually live in Santa Clara, which is not in Eugene. I'm just, if this West 11 EMX is so popular and so wanted by the people, why doesn't the City Council pass a resolution and take it to the vote of the people? I haven't heard any City Council members or anybody at LTD. LTD should stand up and say, listen, if this is something that the people want, let them vote on it. Because this is something that's been ramrodded down our throats. It's something that's, I went to the meeting the other day, the LTD impact meeting, and I saw all the photographs and the pictures, and not anywhere in those pictures did I see any housing or development or population. It was all industrial neighborhood. The West 11th is an industrial neighborhood. If I went to the city and I was an investor, and that's the taxpayer, and LTD was the company, and they came and sold me on putting the EMX that's in place right now, that makes good, viable sense, because there was a city center in Springfield, there's a city center in Eugene, and there's a big university that's got 30,000 or so people there, and there's two hubs that the buses are supplying people to use the buses, and that bus service was already quite busy between Eugene and Springfield. Same as going out to the hospital and to the mall. I can see an investor saying, yes, which is the taxpayer, yes, that's probably a good investment for the future. But I can't see any positive sales position that you could come to an investor and say, it's worth spending $100 million to go down West 11th. You know, if we stop spending money today, and the federal government was paying off the debt, it'll take 396 years to pay off the debt at $100 million a day. And every time somebody, one of these politicians and that want to have federal money, which we think is free money, it's not free money. It's our country is already down the tube, and we need to start backing off down at the grassroots here, spending all the money that the federal government is just pushing down here, and we'll have a better country, and there'll be more money for our society, and we'll have a better better future for my kids and grandkids, because you guys have already spent my kids' money and probably my grandkids' money with all these elaborate, what do they call it, Vision Eugene ideas, which I don't know who these people are, but they're not making decisions based on what the people of Eugene want. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Next is Stan Taylor, followed by Joe Tyndall.
My name's Stan Taylor. I live in 28th and Friendly in Betty Taylor's ward. I teach at Lane Community College, among other things, a constitutional law class. I'm a lawyer licensed to practice in Oregon, California, and Washington, D.C. And I'm here to support the We the People Eugene motion to end corporate personhood. And I want to commend the city for taking this up in its original work session and the work session to come. I do want to add a couple of things that essentially have substituted the Portland motion for the original motion put in by We the People Eugene. There are 2 or 3 changes that we would like to see into the revised motion that make it a little stronger. The first is, most of these are from the language that we originally submitted. The first would be to add into Section 2 of the resolution that you are considering language from our resolution, which would read, regulating corporate political contributions and spending is not equivalent to limiting political speech. It's essentially making it clear that spending money is not speech. The second would be to refer this not only to our federal representatives, but to state representatives as well, which is in our original resolution. And this is a good idea. A number of states, most recently New Mexico, the Senate has passed a resolution similar to the resolution that you're considering. So this is beginning to get picked up at the state legislature level as well, in addition to city councils. Third, we noticed that you left out of the resolution that you've put forward that modifies the Portland resolution, the provision that would ask the city attorney to look into referring the resolution to the voters. And we think that's a good idea and would like to see that back in the resolution. These 3 things said, I want to say that a lot of the conversation around corporate personhood focuses on elections themselves and the amount of money in elections. But this is a deeper issue than just the amount of money in elections, because what giving corporations constitutional rights does is it limits the ability of governments to regulate for the general welfare of their own people. And if you look at the original decision that recognized corporate personhood in 1886, the Santa Clara County decision, that decision was about whether the recently written California Constitution that created differential tax rates for natural persons and corporations could be upheld. And the argument was that because corporations were were artificial persons with 14th Amendment equal protection rights, that this differential tax rate could not be sustained. And the result was essentially that California was being told they couldn't regulate.
Thank you. Joe Tyndall is next, followed by David Ivan Piccioni.
Hi, good evening. My name's Joe Tyndall, and Andrea is my city councilor. This talk does come with this handout that I guess you should have been given by now. Okay. If you want to understand why Occupy came into existence, it's basically on the handout. Years ago, I was trying to find good numbers on concentration of wealth when it dawned on me that every October Forbes magazine proudly publishes exactly what I needed. In 1982, $91 million would put you on the Forbes 400 list. At that time, median household income was $19,300. Median means half of the households earn more and half earn less. Last year, median household income was $48,500, 2.5 times more. But to be on the Forbes list required more than $1 billion, 11.5 times the wealth needed in 1982. So over 30 years, the 1% of the 1% of the 1% has become 4.6 times better off than the rest of us working slobs. In order to achieve this, they looted the savings and loans. They looted pension funds. They shipped jobs to China. They sold derivatives. They pushed subprime mortgages. They took trillion-dollar taxpayer bailouts, and they did a lot more. Are these the more evolved, more disciplined human beings who have made the moral choices? Or are corporate persons and their owners greedy, self-righteous predators lacking the ability to empathize with the damage they have caused? As long as this curve continues to slope upward, things will get worse for working people. As the cash is vacuumed from the 99%, there will be more bankruptcies, more foreclosures, as if 5,975 homes currently on auction in Eugene is not enough, and there will be many more homeless on our streets. So how will we deal with this? By ticketing the unhoused for meaningless infractions so we can add an exclusion enhancement? And if escalating punishment doesn't make them go away, will we eventually start shooting them? Remember, in the 1930s, exclusion zones for undesirables were among the first steps taken by the Nazis to clean up the streets. Occupy will be with you until we provide our least fortunate a safe place to sleep, and until we remove corporate personhood as a tool for our most fortunate to mind the common. Thank you.
David Ivan Figioni is next, and this one, next one after that, I have, it looks like J. Stephen M. Tell, maybe, I don't know.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to talk. Constitutional rights are for natural persons, not corporations. Giving rights to corporations destroys democracy. Please support the We the People Eugene resolution to end all corporate constitutional rights and to get money out of politics. And I also want to say that I do not support the exclusion zone. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, I'll try this. J. Stephen M. Tell, maybe? Yes.
My name is Stephen Michael Todd, but I go by Michael Todd. I officially I moved here on the 27th of May of this year. I face on the 17th again exclusion. I have recently, in the entire congregation of First Christian Church, welcomed me as a member. I come here with no criminal record, but yet, again, recently, I accidentally in October dropped the coffee cup on LTD property. We went on the 8th, I think it was totally dismissed. But yet, I am disabled, legally disabled, yet I still cannot ride LTD. I think that, part of it, current society, we need to get a place, because every day on this last seclusion was basically, a friend of mine was sitting in front of Lazar's out on Broadway, having a bad time. I sit there and talk to people all the time. I was trying to help him. The two bicycle cops come up, they call Vince Patrick up there, who evidently has a heart, whatever for me, and I got, but what I'm saying is that, just because I was trying to help a friend who was in dire straits, now I am going to, and then I won't, I know just about every one of DePaul's security well, and they all love me. I can go in any business around here as long as I have money. They always come back and see us. I've always been welcomed. But yet, because of, and we need to, agreed. Certain people, maybe. But on this exclusion, I think it is wrong. I think that, you're not looking, if giving these people a right to have a place to lay their head to where they can get their feet back up, get back up on their feet, they will become a productive part of the citizens. Not, just out the homeless, which they list us all as transients. I am a resident. I'm working very hard to get a roof and 4 walls. Unfortunately, $698, I don't have first month's current or whatever, but I'm working on getting a resident. But, how your police force has treated me since I have been here by selected ones is appalling. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Fergus McLean is next, followed by Randy Kane.
My name is Fergus McLean. I live in Dexter. Thank you very much, councilors, for taking up the corporate personhood resolution. I think you'll find it's a bit of a sticky wicket. There aren't any simple answers. It's kind of a bottomless pit. But tonight I'd just like to, I might comment to Leah that the Tea Party, the original Tea Party, was fought against a corporation. But I'd like to comment on the issue of labor in the corporate, being added to the corporate personhood resolution. And the reason that labor and corporations are confused or combined in this issue is because of issues of personhood. And these are arcane legal arguments with a long and muddled history. But since what you are proposing is a resolution, you're not really bound by law, even though you've quoted a lot of precedent in this resolution by the excellent research that was done in Portland. But really, this is a statement of principle. And I think if you try to go behind the corporate personhood confusion, you'll see that our government was the first government that was established with the people as sovereign. That was the innovation of the American experiment. The people are sovereign. Corporations are chartered by the state, by the people. They are a creation of the people. They are not the people. They are in no way equivalent to the people. And the privileges given to corporations, limited liability, and perpetual life, all the things that Thomas Jefferson fought against, are what permit them to accumulate capital. They have a tremendous advantage over individual persons and are able to become, as John Davidson has said, virtually a royalty. The 1% is the only segment of our society that's benefited financially through the course of our economic collapse and even before that. But getting to unions, what are unions? They're considered to be the foil of corporations because they are the voice that speaks for the people in the face of corporations. But unions are simply combinations of individuals. Every dollar a union spends comes out of a working person's pocket. So I'd encourage you to think in terms of principle rather than legalities and recognize that if you want to address union issues, that would be appropriate in another setting, but perhaps not in this resolution.
Next is Randy. Please don't do that. Randy Kane, followed by Ali Valkyrie.
Good evening. My name is Randy Kane. I live on 13th Avenue in Ward 1. I'm here to speak regarding the public safety zone downtown. And I'm afraid it really does remind me of the early 1930s in Germany, when there were parts of Berlin and major cities where people were being removed and set aside to places, parts of town where their behavior was more acceptable. If someone has committed a crime or an offense that warrants them being arrested or detained in some way, then that person should be regarded with that crime and charged with that crime regardless of what part of town he's in. There has to be some way of doing this under some form of probation or some way where the police are not discriminating someone against someone for just what they look like and what part of town they're in. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Ali Valkyrie is next, and then John Monroe.
My name is Ali Valkyrie, and I live in Ward 1. From what I understand, the proper intent of the downtown exclusion law is to ensure that violent offenders and those who are a danger to the community are not allowed to endanger us further. It's also my understanding that there are concerns about the potential for abuse of the law, specifically that it might be used to target the homeless, but there are no tangible reports of such abuses, and therefore it's accepted by the council and the mayor that the law is being properly used. I'm here to tell you firsthand how your exclusion process is being grossly abused. Last Thursday, I sat in municipal court and watched in disgust as the city prosecutor and a downtown officer attempted to exclude a homeless man from downtown for 90 days after he was cited for allegedly smoking a joint in front of the Horsehead, a charge he denies and is yet to be convicted for. I was at the hearing as a character witness because I knew the defendant personally, and I knew that this person was not in the least bit of danger to the community. I'm angry that a law that meant to exclude violent offenders is being used to exclude someone for such a petty offense. I also know that his presence and the presence of others like him on the corner of Broadway and Olive is not welcome by both the police and many local businesses, and that many of the homeless downtown have become targets for harassment. I had personally witnessed the defendant being harassed in the past by the same officers who tried to exclude him. At the hearing, there was no evidence, witness, or testimony from the prosecution other than the word of the officer, and I personally found the city prosecutor's tactics and intent to be anything but honorable. He grossly distorted and misrepresented the facts of the case, telling the judge repeatedly that the defendant had used drugs in the vicinity of elementary students, which is factually untrue. I found this twisting of the facts to be quite offensive, as it was being used to suggest that defendant's behavior made him a danger to children. The city prosecutor also repeatedly stressed, highlighted, and distorted the defendant's criminal history as a reason why he should be excluded, despite the fact that he served his time and was released. The exclusion was thankfully denied, with the judge stating that this is not how the law was intended to be used. I'm disturbed that my friend was subjected to such a process under such pretenses, especially without the aid of an attorney, and that judicial resources and taxpayer dollars were misused and wasted in this way. Upon further investigation, I learned in the past people have actually been excluded from downtown for small amounts of marijuana, one who was a military veteran. I also learned that the ordinance dictates that an officer is supposed to always issue a notice to show cause whenever anyone is cited for small amounts of marijuana. I personally know people who have cited for this exact violation. None of them faced exclusion. They all have jobs, homes, and were customers at the local bar when they were cited. If this law was actually being applied equally, if we truly believed as a community that anyone who had a bit of weed in their pocket should be not allowed downtown, I think it's fair to say that there'd be very few people left downtown. The reality is this law is not being applied equally. It is being applied with abuse of discretion. I can tell you EPD will once again attempt to exclude the same defendant for the same offense next week. I will let you know the court date so you can witness such abuses for yourself. Thank you.
Next is John Monroe, followed by Sue Sierra Lupe.
Hello, my name is John Monroe, just on the corner of 18th and Olive. I was also at the municipal court hearing for the individual who was showing cause for exclusion, and there are a number of issues that came up in that kind of seem symptomatic and actually are in line with Councilor Taylor was saying at the issue that came up at the beginning of this council meeting, namely that the prosecution continually brought up the fact of a prior criminal record for which the defendant had already served time, which, as I brought up in the the hearing, seemed to show a systematic lack of faith in the correction system as it's being used right now. If we are trying to continually penalize people for having had a criminal record, for having served time, then what we're really doing is punishing people for what we perceive to be a threat, instead of punishing people for crimes having been proven to be committed. This is a gross violation of due process and is in fact becoming systematic in relation to the homeless downtown. If you have a record, you are already assumed to be a threat. If you have spent time in prison, you are going to be punished more than if you haven't. This is a violation of everything we're attempting to protect through democratic process by enabling people to exercise discretion. Another issue that's been continually coming up is the fact that most of what's been used against homeless downtown fall under the form of traffic violations. I am under the impression that when the City Council receives information from the Eugene Police Department on citations that have been made, that does not include traffic citations. If that's true, then you wouldn't have been aware of the number of homeless people that are being cited for not using a crosswalk correctly, not crossing the street at 90-degree angles, or any of the other petty crimes that the Eugene Police Department downtown bike units have been using against homeless people on a regular, systematic basis. If we're going to address these issues, we have to look first and foremost at the language and the mechanics of our legal system at the municipal level, and we have to assess whether or not within them, regardless of the original intent with which they were made, there are consistent patterns of maluse. This is not to say that there is a pattern of corruption or misintent by anyone involved. Rather, I would like to think of these as a mechanical error that we could all fix in good faith, that we do not want discrimination against homeless downtown, nor that we want to see the downtown exclusion law used for discriminatory purposes, but rather that's something which is entirely too complex, which a police commissioner stated he didn't understand, and that is not being used correctly by the Bikes police downtown. We should be correcting as opposed to making permanent, as the intention is. Thank you.
Sue Sierra Lupe is next, followed by Charlie Swanson.
Good evening, Mayor Piercy and members of Eugene City Council. My name is Sue Sierra Lupe, and I moved to Eugene 30 years ago. I am an organizer of Occupy's Free Medical Clinic. For the last few Sundays, our team of doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals have been offering free medical service to anyone who needs our help. Our volunteers originally assembled to support the Occupy movement. No one understands how devastated our economy is more than healthcare professionals. We have seen families agonize over decisions between paying for overpriced medical procedures and keeping their homes. We have watched patients die because they waited to the last moment to seek medical care that they knew they couldn't afford. Since we first set up our little first aid tent at the Parks Block back in October, the number of patients that have wandered in for care has grown exponentially. Back in October, 1 or 2 medical volunteers on staff at one time was more than enough to serve the community. When we reopened Occupy Medical last Sunday, we brought a staff of 12. We were busy. Most of the population that we serve come to us because they have little or no health insurance. They are homeless, the underemployed, and just the unlucky. Occupy Medical is growing. This last Sunday, we were joined by Food Not Bombs. Next Sunday, LCC's nursing students have volunteered to help our cause. In our spare time, we are organizing a street outreach program. Eugene is a community of good-hearted, hard-working people who want to make a difference. In another month or two, we will have outgrown the floor space that the federal building has to offer. We will need to move to the Parks Block, which is inside the exclusion zone. This means that we will no longer be able to help the patients that have been singled out to leave our downtown area. No civilization can survive without health care. We all know that the numbers of the poor and the homeless are growing. If we don't take care of their needs, we leave ourselves open to a medical disaster of epic proportions. Exclusion zones are designed to shield the public from toxic hazards. Examples of exclusion zones include Chernobyl and Coffin Bay. Eugene doesn't need an exclusion zone. Treating our homeless population as a visual hazard that must be shielded from the eyes of the middle-class shoppers is shameful and dangerous. Hiding the suffering of our neighbors serve to make those problems worse. Please fix this error.
Charlie Swanson is next, followed by Scott Russell.
Charlie Swanson, I'm a resident of Ellens Lanca's ward. I'm speaking today in support of the proposed resolution to call on our congressional delegation to support a constitutional amendment that declares corporations should not have the constitutional rights that are inherent in people. This is important locally because it would help get money out of the political process and allow decisions to be made which better reflect the will of the people. We, the people of Eugene, proposed such a resolution in November and presented to the Council petitions signed by about 5,000 citizens. I understand that you have worked with the City Attorney to modify the resolution to more closely reflect a similar resolution that passed in Portland. Portland passed a strong resolution, so I applaud this effort and I thank you for it. But I would like to encourage you to make sure that there are several things that are included in the resolution. The resolution, contrary to what some speakers had said earlier, does not say anything at all that corporations cannot exist. It merely talks about the constitutional rights that corporations have, and we are saying they should not have them. I think it should include the prohibition on corporate political spending to completely disallow this. This will protect shareholders who may disagree with the political views of the corporate administration. Since we hope that the state legislative delegation will be voting to ratify this amendment in the near future, I also strongly encourage you to have copies of the past resolution sent to those representatives who represent a portion of Eugene in the state legislature. I also urge you to refer this resolution to the voters. I think that in 1988, there was a section 2.199 of the city charter that allows questions or propositions to be referred by the council for an advisory vote. So I urge you to think about this. Thank you.
Scott Russell please. Thank you, all of you who are expressing your support with your fingers instead of your mouths. Thank you very much. Scott Russell is next, followed by Charlie Warren.
Hello, I'm Scott Russell. I have a business on West 11th as well as a home in the Southwest Hills, so Mr. Pryor is the counselor for my two locations. So, as I mentioned, my name is Scott Russell. My wife and I are small business owners of European Motorcycles of Western Oregon on West 11th. In addition to being a small business owner, we're also residents of Eugene, so we're taxpayers 2 times over. I'm here tonight to shed light on the city's purchase of Authority motorcycles. Did you know in 2005 our company was awarded the contract for the purchase of 11 motorcycles through a competitive bid process? We delivered on time and on budget. Did you know in 2007 we were awarded a contract for the sale of BMW Authority motorcycles by the state of Oregon because the existing contract holder was not able to satisfy contractual obligations? Did you know BMW motorcycles continue to be evaluated across the country and continue to be rated at the top for safety, reliability, and cost of ownership? Did you know that the city could have replaced its current fleet by now using the state contract and saved considerable time, money, and resources? Did you know in August of 2011 the city chose not to use the state contract but to conduct its own evaluation through a request for proposal process? Did you know that there were 4 responses received, and through the evaluation of qualifications, the ability to support, local presence, and price, our company was given an intent to award for the police motorcycles? That not only were we selected, but our quote was priced at below the city's budget. Did you know that the city canceled its RFP and the intent to award this to our company in December 2011 and chose to issue a purchase order for BMW motorcycles to a rogue retrofitter from Idaho named Beaudry Motorsports based on the reason that the city could save some money? Did you know today, without receiving the contract for the purchase of the motorcycles, we employ 1 less individual in our business, so therefore the city gets less tax revenues and we contribute, and the city contributes to the unemployment rates here in the state of Oregon? Did you know that the city was advised that Beaudry Motorsports was not a motorcycle dealer, that a state contract was not valid, and he was terminated by the state of Oregon? He was no longer in business as a motorcycle dealership. His work carries no factory warranty whatsoever. He has multi-million-dollar judgments against him in Idaho, yet the city proceeded with issuing a purchase order for the purchase of vehicles from this individual. Did you know that the city's purchase order was altered by Beaudry Motorsports or its business partner, Big Sky, out of Montana, before being submitted to BMW? BMW did not fill that order. Altering a government document is a criminal act. So at this point, I'm out of time, and I have plenty more to say, but I'm not going to waste your time. It's just not fair. We work hard for our money, and we'd appreciate you taking this into account.
Charlie Warren is next, followed by David Bowman.
Good evening. My name is Charles Warren. I live at 86260 Lorraine Highway, and I own and work at an office building at 1158 High Street. I'm here tonight accompanied by some of the board of directors of Midtown Business Associates to talk to you about a neighborhood that's just a few blocks south of here. We call Midtown. The boundaries are 11th to 15th and Charlton to Ferry. We formed our association 13 years ago when street crime, addicts, and vagrants were making it unsafe and frightening to do business or even walk through our neighborhood. Our sole purpose is to tax ourselves in the form of membership dues to hire our own private security to keep Midtown safe. We were quite successful, and according to police records, crime went down in Midtown over 50% the first year. We are currently an organization of 85 property and business owners who, including our employees and our residents, represent literally thousands of people. Our yearly budget is over $80,000, which goes exclusively for private security patrols. We fund a 2-person bicycle patrol and a 24-hour dispatch service provided by Advanced Security. Due to the continued decline in public safety funding, we have tried over the years to handle our own security problems. This year, however, with a fortified alcohol ban in the Whitaker neighborhood, to a very small degree, the downtown exclusion zone, although we are strongly supported. But most of all, the increased bicycle patrols, police bicycle patrols downtown. Pardon my voice, I have a cold. So the bicycle patrols downtown have caused a migration of their troublemakers to Midtown, and it's overwhelming us. For example, the average number of contacts our security patrols report monthly has been around 75. This September alone, it was over 300. We applaud the success of the programs I mentioned, but because they don't apply citywide, they don't eliminate the problems. They just move them to other neighborhoods. Now, our problems are not with the legitimate homeless or the unemployed. Our hearts truly go out to them. But rather the alcoholics, the addicts, the drug dealers, the vagrants, and the so-called travelers who come to Eugene because of our reputation for a high level of tolerance for this kind of behavior. For years, we were able to deal with our own problems. But this summer, because of the migration, we were overwhelmed, and we will continue to be until we get some help. That's why we're here tonight, and we've come directly to you. We'd like to ask the City Council to consider 2 things that would help us get on top of our dilemma in Midtown. My time is almost up, so the next speaker and another board member, David Bomar, will expound on this. Thank you.
David Bomar is next, followed by Hugh Pritchard.
Good evening. My name is David Bomar, and I live at 91-120 Abbey Road in Coburg. And I'm a part owner of an office building on 13th and Olive, the old Eugene Library, and a partner in the primary leaser of Allheiser Hubbard Engineers. As Charles mentioned, we've hired a private security firm to help us with our security problems, and we've worked hard to coordinate our private security with the police, and we've received excellent participation from them. Charles has also mentioned that because of the successful policies being implemented, the Whitaker neighborhood fortified alcohol ban, the downtown exclusion zone, and the increase in the downtown police patrols, we've been impacted by quite a migration into our area. It shows up in our records fairly clearly. We also have Whitebird in our area and the First Christian Church in our neighborhood, and they do really good work, but the services they provide oftentimes are a magnet for some of the problems that we see happen in our area. Regarding the policies that we stated earlier, with the exception of the exclusion zone, we'd like to see any street crime or vagrancy ordinances go citywide so that we can see what's happening in our area when an ordinance or a policy is implemented in one area. It quite simply moves people over into ours. Second, we believe we need a bicycle patrolman assigned exclusively to Midtown. We have a lot of respect for Sergeant Fitzpatrick. We've had him come in and talk to us, and he runs a patrol downtown. And we've also had Officer Ellis in the West University area come in and talk to us about what they're doing. They also try to patrol Midtown the best they can, but their number of people are limited, and their top priority really is the downtown. The Midtown neighborhood would like to see a little more effort or a little more priority on our part to give us a few more patrols. The downtown patrols are going from 6 to 9 officers this summer, and we ask that one of these officers be assigned to the Midtown, or at the very least, more priority be given to patrolling Midtown. Although we require a private security firm to conduct themselves professionally and with restraint, we talk to them about that quite a bit. They cannot project the authority or claim the respect given a trained Eugene police officer by the public, and we need this component most for law enforcement in our area. We'd just like the thought that by hiring our own private security and cleaning up our area, police presence is being reduced in Midtown, a presence we continue to need. We retain private security to accommodate police presence, not replace it. We need your help if we're going to be able to keep Midtown livable and a safe place to do business. We ask that our two councilors, Brown and Zelenka, take the lead on our behalf and make sure this is some sort of agenda item in the near future. Thank you very much.
Hugh Pritchard is next, followed by Art Bulmer.
Hi, I'm Hugh Pritchard. I live on Emerald Street in Councilor Zelenka's ward, and I own property in Midtown and downtown. I'm a dues-paying member of Midtown Business Associates, not a board member. I'm an original and current member of Downtown Eugene, Inc., and my wife is a board member. My purpose in being here is to emphasize the good work being done in the greater downtown area by both the Eugene Police Department and our privately funded security efforts. You're very aware of the red cap guides and security provided by DEI in the core of downtown. I think you may be less aware till tonight of the two-person bike patrols, 24-hour security, which we provide in Midtown through the Midtown Business Association. Both of our organizations enjoy excellent communication and backup and respect with the EPD, and together we get quite a lot done. Not enough, but a lot. You are all aware that we have a broken criminal justice system. There is not justice for the criminals who victimize our neighborhood. They just go free, usually the same day. There are no consequences for many criminal behaviors in downtown and midtown, despite what I've heard tonight. There used to be, there aren't now. I've owned the same building on Charlton for 34 years, and things are worse now than they used to be. I know that you can't directly impact this problem, this miscarriage and lack of justice. So I do want to thank you for increasing the EPD resources in downtown and ask you to think about and include adjacent neighborhoods for the same level of effort. We ask that the law be enforced equally throughout the greater downtown area. Specifically, the police be deployed where crime is happening or anticipated without artificial boundaries. That you consider all your decisions based on the impact on the greater downtown area. We believe we are adversely affected by the enforcement of ordinances on one side of a block, but not on the other. The dog ordinances, fortified alcohol, exclusion zone, all impact our neighborhood. As I said, we enjoy excellent relationships with EPD, but we do need your understanding and help with the exact same problems which occur in the core of downtown, occurring in our neighborhoods. For us, it is all one neighborhood. Thank you.
Art Bulmer is next, followed by Joel Narva.
Thank you. My name's Art Bowman. I'm from the 2nd Ward. I wanted to start out by saying a few kind words about the Eugene Police Department. I've had any number of positive interactions with members of the Eugene Police Force. I say this sincerely, and it's actually kind of surprising considering that there seem to be very few penalties for misconduct on the part of officers. At least that's the perception shared not just by rabble-rousers, but by many ordinary citizens. This is something you have to consider when you're voting on the exclusionary zone, because there is a wide latitude and a wide opportunity for policemen who might not share the standards of equality that many officers do to selectively enforce it and to go after individuals that they just plain don't like. Now, whether this perception is true or not is something that I'm trying not to comment on. This is something you need to think about. And when you vote on this issue in the upcoming weeks, I'm just asking that you look into your consciences and remember that you swore an oath to protect the rights of all citizens in Eugene equally.
Joel Narva is next, followed by Courtney Jolie.
Thank you. My name is Joel Narva. I live on Echo Lane in unincorporated Santa Clara, right on the edge of your city. I also live within the urban growth boundary, so the decisions you do make do directly impact me. I follow laws that you make. I'm here tonight to speak about a proposal that's in front of you that you'll be deciding on in a few weeks on changing the metropolitan growth boundaries. I believe this proposal is a terrible idea. I believe this proposal is a poorly veiled ruse to expedite development at the urban edge, specifically by stripping your authority on these boundaries. It will help to fast-track the approval of gravel mining and other interests that are not appropriate immediately next to urban residential neighborhoods. I spoke with my representative about this, Lane County Commissioner Jay Bozovich. He described to me how one family he came in contact with had recently purchased some acreage in this area in between the urban growth boundary and the current metropolitan growth boundary. In fact, Commissioner Lycan also was quoted in the newspaper talking about this family, single family that had bought 8 acres and could not separate this land under current law. Both commissioners made this grand case and are now trying to change thousands of acres of land at the edge of town to make it more easy to accommodate this kind of development. What they ignored, and I talked to Commissioner Bozovich in person, what was completely ignored here when they talk about this family or small handful of families, when Mike Clark asked on November 30th how many people are affected, and the answer was a small handful inside these 2 boundaries. What was completely ignored here were the hundreds of us who have lived there for decades. My wife and I have lived for 24 years on this boundary and have relied on the protection of due process of the Lane County Commissioner and the City of Eugene and the City of Springfield City Council on these enlarged land use decisions. So if you cede your authority, we will no longer have that due process. You'll be giving up authority for no gain and for a faster tracking of inappropriate land uses. Commissioner Bozovich even said to me in my meeting with him that, hey, he was not perfect, they could make mistakes, and if they do, we could appeal doing normal processes with the Land Use Board of Appeals. And I went home and thought about that. I realized he's putting the burden of appeal on ordinary citizens, where now the due process has the corporations and large companies that want to develop this land. It's going to come down to us and our costs. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Courtney Jolly's next, followed by Adrian Eames.
Good evening. We're going to kind of switch around. We've practiced in an order. But my name's Alana Strader, and I'm a University of Oregon student. I'm a junior, and I'm here with some of my classmates today, and we'd like to talk to you about reclassifying skateboards here in the city of Eugene. In recent years, skateboarding has changed from being a recreational activity to a well-recognized form of transportation. Skateboarding is the fastest-growing sport in America, particularly among teenagers. As a result, colleges around the United States are seeing an increase in the amount of skateboarders that commute to and from class every day. This increase in popularity has led to a greater number of accidents and near misses between skateboarders and pedestrians around campuses. In order to address this problem, we've gathered our own data about the severity of accidents and near misses involving skateboarders. A survey that we conducted through the University of Oregon of over 100 students and faculty members, and in this survey we discovered that 33% of students feel uncomfortable commuting to and from campus, with 21% saying that they were very uncomfortable. A staggering amount of accidents are occurring each year, with 23% of students experiencing an accident yearly. However, accidents are not the only issue. Near misses happen regularly and add to the feeling of discomfort for many of these students. 65% of students experience a near miss at least once a month, with a large portion of these students experiencing a near miss 2 or 3 times a week. These concerns are not just limited to students, as Lee Schumacher, the bicycle coordinator for Eugene, has also raised concerns about the increase in injuries as a result of skateboarding activity. Through Lee and other city experts, we have determined that a large amount of accidents are a result of the misclassification of skateboarders as pedestrians. Thank you.
And this must be Courtney.
Yes, I'm Courtney, and I am also
Just introduce your whole name.
Courtney Jolly, and I'm also a student at the University of Oregon. and I'm just following what she said. So the Department of Eugene Transportation Planning has found that many of these accidents stem from the current laws involving skateboards. In particular, we have found that city codes classifying skateboards are unrealistic and unenforceable, which has led to skateboards being free to behave however they want around campus. In order to cut down on potential accidents, skateboards need to be governed by a set of codes that they are willing to follow and that police are capable of enforcing. The Eugene Police Department is currently unable to enforce the current codes because they do not fit the environment properly. The existing codes classify skateboards as pedestrians because their feet touch the ground. This is true, but skateboarders differentiate themselves from pedestrians in the following ways. For one, they travel significantly faster than pedestrians. They also cannot stop as quickly as pedestrians. They cannot maneuver as efficiently as pedestrians. They cannot maneuver through large groups of people, and skateboards are not designed to go on sidewalks because of the cracks in the sidewalks slow them down. So we have a strong interest in improving the city's transportation and therefore have came up with the following solution to the skateboarding problem and accidents that originate from the current classification as pedestrians.
And this is Adrian.
All right. I'm Adrian Eames. I'm also a student. I'm a junior at University of Oregon, and I live at 19th and Kincaid. I'm personally a skateboarder, and I really love skateboarding. I've been skateboarding for about 4 years now, but I'm pretty much not willing to do it around the city of Eugene because it's pretty much chaos out there. I have the choice of riding in the bike lane, which is against the law, and you don't really get respect on the bike lane, or you can ride on the sidewalk where you're going to run into people pretty constantly, and it's actually not that nice to ride in. So we believe that the city of Eugene should pass an ordinance quite like Title 16, which was passed in Portland in 2009. Specifically, we believe that people riding skateboarders or any device that's powered solely by human power upon any street or premises open to the public should have the same rights and duties as the rider of a bicycle as provided by the Oregon City Code. More specifically, we'd like skateboarders to have some type of lighting when they're riding at the hours past sunset. So they should have some type of white light that's visible from 500 feet in front of the device, and also be equipped with some type of red lighting that can be seen from 600 feet behind the device. We also believe that, again, this is from the Title 16, that the Eugene Police Department should monitor and maintain records and injuries of deaths attributed to riders of skateboards or other similar devices in the city of Eugene and report their findings annually to the City Council. On top of that, we believe that the Eugene Department of Transportation should consult the Bureau of Risk Management to minimize claims resulting from city defects in the city streets, and that they should also meet with members of the Eugene Police Bureau to designate preferred skating routes. We think this would really clear things up if the skateboarders knew exactly where they should be traveling to maintain maximum safety.
Next is Brian Weaver, followed by Willard Rogers.
Thanks for hanging out. Hi, I'm Brian Weaver, Ward 1, West Eugene. I've got a copy of the latest Lim Home polls for you. These were taken earlier this month, February. And it's about Envision Eugene. And there's a lot of confusion about what's expected, what's planned, as evident by the last Monday's meeting. This poll says about 30% of the people approve it, about 30% disapprove it, and here's what's kind of alarming, 40% don't know. So I want to bring that to your attention. The next page is another poll that shows that there's the majority supports expanding the urban growth boundary, 49 to 35, but the graph, the trend goes like that. the trend is what's important, not the actual number. And also on the webcast, I want to thank Councilor Brown for running the numbers, getting to the bottom of the data that the staff has presented. And then I did notice that he was talking about an overlay, and then somebody to his left kind of shushed him, and he looked up and, kind of dropped with what he was saying. So I want to encourage the councilors not to be coerced or being a victim of censorship during your work session. I think that's important. Next topic I want to bring up is the EMX, as you know. Today in the Register Guard, the general manager, Ron Kilcoyne, seemed to finally admit that the public needs to be involved in this proposal. And I think that's been the case. I'm still waiting on a response from the project manager about the nomenclature of shared lanes. Now, they're canvassing people or going out and telling people that the BAT lane, used to be a BAT lane, business access transit lane, is a shared lane now, and that's misleading to the public. They need to qualify it, saying that cars in that lane can only use it for one block per vehicle. They need to qualify it. Also, there's been a little confusion in my mind. They're going to take a lane from Van Buren to Fillmore Street on 6th Avenue. And LTD claims that that's going to reduce congestion, if there is any now, because it pulls cars out of through lanes and pulls the buses out. Well, of course, there's no bus service on 6th right now. That's a moot point. Furthermore, sure, it takes cars out of the through lanes, but at the expense of losing one lane out of 4. So, those are two answers that it's like a hot potato. LT doesn't want to answer. They're ignoring it, and I think the council, I think you should pin them down if you have a chance, if you're going to vote on this again. Thank you.
Willard Rogers is next, and last up is Cliff Gray.
Good evening. My name is Bill Rogers. I'm speaking today as a resident of Ward 1 and also on behalf of Common Cause Oregon. I urge a yes vote on Resolution 5055. The Citizens United decision focused on one aspect of the flow of money in federal campaigns: independent expenditures, that is, payments that are used in support of or against a candidate but managed independently of any candidate. Independent expenditures are treated differently from direct contributions due to an earlier Supreme Court decision, Buckley versus Vallejo. That decision justified limits on direct contributions because the potential for corruption or the perception of corruption outweighed free speech concerns. But at the same time, it struck down limits on independent contributions from individuals, groups, and PACs. The court ruled that given the independent nature of these contributions, there is no potential for corruption. I'll come back to that in a second. Then in Citizens United, the court equated corporations to individuals and so extended Buckley by ruling that corporations as well as individuals can make unlimited contributions to independent PACs. So the assertion for no potential for corruption from independent expenditures may make sense to members of the court. Most Americans find their reasoning very troubling. National polls indicate that 80% of us were opposed to the Citizens United decision. I think there's a real fear in our country that our representative form of government is being destroyed, turning instead into a plutocracy. Because too often our elected officials are suspected of representing corporations and the wealthy rather than the general public. And the last time I checked, the approval rating of the U.S. Congress was an abysmal low 10%. Norman Ornstein, he's a scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, expressed the incredulity of many of us, ranging from the Tea Party to the MoveOn.org, when he said, quote, Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy, who wrote the majority opinion in Citizens United, said there could be no corruption in independent spending. What planet does he live on? Unquote. The one effect of Citizens United was to equate corporations with people. It did so on the basis of the First Amendment, and this means that addressing corporate personhood is not enough. This is why it's so important that this resolution also addresses regulation of independent expenditures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last up, Cliff Gray.
Hello, I'm Cliff Gray, and I live on 2622 Bell Avenue, Eugene. I'm a relative newcomer. I was a long-time labor activist, and later during that period I was elected president of a local, the Amalgamated Transit Union. So learning just only a few minutes before this meeting started that you were going to include labor unions within this resolution against corporate personhood, it disturbed me quite a bit. Labor unions are not corporations. They are composed of real people, people who are concerned about their wages and living conditions and want to be a part of the American dream. I can't see how, including that, and especially the opportunism that it displays, it would very intractly distract from the resolution, because a resolution like this has to be one voice across the country. It has to say the same thing. And Mr. Poling, if you have any questions to me, you can address me directly. So there's a chance that the resolution, Eugene's resolve, will be negated by adding such material and attacks. If you wish to make a separate resolution concerning labor's political contributions, then go right ahead, but it's no part of this. So I would ask you, if you have a way to withdraw that added language, I would appreciate it, hearing that you would do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public forum for this evening, and thank you all for being here on these many topics. I wanted to say for the Mr. Gray, who just spoke, that when we had our last meeting, what was said is that our attorney said that the reason that language was put in there about the union was because that's in the language that was passed by Citizen United, and so if you're going to overturn what they said, you have to overturn all of it, was what he told us. So that's that was the reasoning, and I will certainly take into consideration what you said. The other thing I wanted you to know is that Councilor Zelenka has asked for rewriting of the original proposal to include the things that have been brought up by councilors and by the three items that you all mentioned earlier today that you wanted, that Stan Taylor mentioned about what you wanted from the original proposal from our folks here. And so I haven't looked at it thoroughly yet, but you may want to take a look at that and see what you think about it while we consider it. Councilor Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening and sharing their opinions with us. City Manager, I have a couple questions about some of the different testimonies that we heard. Can you please update us on how we do RFPs, if there's like a memo back in history of, we really can't get involved at that level, but it'd be kind of nice to get a refresher course on that.
Okay.
So we know how to explain city policy. And also, I hear what the Midtown folks said, and I'm sorry that they're having to pay for their own security. I don't mean to sound flippant, but at least they can do that. I mean, my neighborhood in Train Song, you know, we have the same amount of issues, and our neighborhood is not able to pay for security. I think the basic problem with that is, you know, the lack of law enforcement in our community, and you know, for certain things, and so it's a challenge all over town, and I just wanted to say that. And this, as far as the skaters go, they left? Skateboard people? Oh, because I really think that sounds kind of interesting. I would really encourage them to get a hold of our bike and pedestrian group that's working on the bike things.
That's working with them.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so that ends the business of this evening. Thank you all for being here.